Okay, we are going live. Let's try this again. So I threw up a question box, but I guess I waited too long. It was about 2 or 3 days ago. I think when it's past 48 hours, it doesn't populate when I go live. There should be like a little question thing with all your guys' question in the question box. So instead, what I did was I went back to those questions and I screenshotted it. Then I put it on my computer, and then I'm just gonna read off the questions off my computer because I can't find it on Instagram for it to have its fun. Anyways, let's get into the Q&A. And for anybody joining, I'm just gonna put down that we are doing Q&A live right now. I also have a separate camera that I'm recording from, so there's a lot of technology stuff going on. But I'm trying to go live here, answer some questions. It's just better for me to answer questions live and then type it all out because it just takes forever. And this will all be recorded as well. So I'm going to read off some of these questions. All right. How to quickly treat headaches. So the biggest thing with headaches is dehydration. And it's not about drinking more water, it's about getting more electrolytes in. And electrolytes could be, traditionally, would be your salt-based electrolytes like magnesium, sodium, potassium, and chloride. However, I think that what's superior is to get electrolytes from fulvic acid or fulvic and humic, because you're going to get plenty, way more than just a traditional. So if you look at the periodic table, it has many elements in there. Essentially, you want to replenish your body with those types of elements. That's what humic and fulvic does. So long story short, first thing that I would do to quickly treat headaches is hydrate the body with electrolytes. You can use salt. I really like the Accelerated Health Products Ancient Sea Salt. Actually, I don't think it's sea salt. It's 3 types of salt. It's from Utah, it's Himalayan, and actual real Himalayan, and it's also sea salt. So 3 different types of salt combined in the Accelerated Health Products Ancient Salt. And then you can put that in your water. I would do like a pinch, or you can do, I do about a teaspoon per 8 ounces or so. The other thing that you can do is use Beam Minerals, BEAM Minerals. And I like the one Electrolyzed that has fulvic in it. What's cool about fulvic is it can enter the cell freely. So meaning it doesn't have to wait. Let's just say you have cellular damage for whatever reason. Maybe it's cancer, maybe it's toxins, insulin resistance, radiation poisoning, something like that. And for whatever reason, your body can't absorb or assimilate those micronutrients and minerals. Well, fulvic doesn't care. It's just going to go right through, and it's going to deliver and dump off minerals and nutrients for the cell. So that's a very cool thing about fulvic. If you haven't heard of fulvic and humic before, maybe you've heard of Shilajit. That's another one. So very powerful compounds, ancient, comes from ancient soil. If you go on my website, I do have under my recommendations tab, and where it says minerals, I do have like a PowerPoint presentation on that, so you can go and check that out. It's free. Okay, second thing with headaches is liver and gallbladder congestion. Very common, okay? And this can, for females, it can, you will probably feel more of these symptoms during your cycle. When you're starting your period, a few days before your period, you might start to experience these symptoms. So like a headache or migraine. So in that scenario, you're going to want to do things like some liver support. I really like things like Shasandra from Supreme Nutrition. Accelerated Health Products has one called Liver Care, which I think is great. It has TUDCA in it. There's many good uses for TUDCA that's helpful for liver drainage and liver detoxification. That's a bile salt, also helps you with digestion as well too. So open up the liver and the gallbladder pathways when it comes to headaches. Those are the 2 things. If you're there's a technique that I do called sacro-occipital technique where we do cranial work. So essentially when people have cranial faults, there's 22 bones in the skull. If there are misalignments in your skull or things that are not moving correctly, all the bones actually move when you breathe, but over time they move less, right? Because things get fused up, but they don't completely fuse, okay? They're very tight, but they don't completely fuse. They don't move like your shoulder does, but they still move like little smaller than smaller than millimeters of movements. So anyways, when you breathe, it moves. This movement creates the pumping effect for the cerebral spinal fluid to flow up and down your brain to your spinal cord, down to your sacrum. So when you're, if any areas of your, if your bones or sutures are not, are stuck together or they're not moving correctly, then it's going to create congestion. When there's congestion, we can have headaches. Essentially, it's a circulation issue. Okay, so anytime you increase circulation, get your liver going, get some electrolytes in, you can solve those headaches. The other thing would be blood sugar. If you have poor blood sugar control, if you're letting your blood sugar dip too far low, maybe you're skipping meals, or you're working very hard, you're under the influence of cortisol, you're in fight or flight, that's going to drop your cortisol. So you have blood sugar issues, that can also cause headaches too. So hydrate with minerals, get some food in, ideally something with carbohydrates to get the blood sugar up, okay? If it's chronic, start looking at the liver and gallbladder, okay? And if that's not helping, go see somebody that does cranial manipulation, cranial adjustments, cranial sacral therapy, anything involving moving the head around, moving the bones in the head around. Okay, let's go on to the next one. So I have so many I have 10 pages, and every page has multiple questions. Okay, Essentia water okay to drink all the time? I don't know what that is, but I'll tell you the thing about water is I'm very much enjoying my spring aqua system. I'm actually going to have Kenny Liu on for a podcast episode where we're going to talk about all things spring water, structured water, and how they developed their spring aqua system, and how it mimics like nature and stuff like that, and why that is a really good thing for people to consider to drink. Gonna take a sip of my matcha here. Shout out to Wild Orchard. Wild Orchard, that is so underrated. They just real quick tangent on Wild Orchard is they quadruple wash their tea leaves. Their tea leaves, so I've been educated on tea since I've known these Wild Orchard guys. I just keep learning a lot of different stuff. So if you're a matcha drinker, what gives you, you go to Japan, or that's my UV light machine. You guys want to take a look? Look at that. So it's like overcast right now. It looks like Seattle outside in Southern California. So there's not much UV. Supplementing with UV and red light at the moment. I got all this blue light around me. So where were we? Orchard matcha. If you buy matcha, a lot of people will prioritize on getting the greenest, the darkest green matcha, because it's pretty, it looks nice, it's believed to have it to be superior. So what I found out is how they get that matcha to be so green is they will shade the green tea leaves, meaning they'll put a tarp over it. And when they put a tarp over it, now that tarp has it has plastic typically, right? So when the sun hits it, guess what's happening? It's leaching microplastics into the tea leaves. So I learned about that. So that's why they don't shade their matcha, or they don't shade their tea leaves. And it comes out like this. It's not very aesthetically, pleasing to the eye when I make it, because it's not too green. It looks like kind of muddy-ish, but it still tastes great. And I'm a bigger fan that I'm not getting in microplastics and toxins in. They They wash it 4 times, the tea leaves, because let's say you're in a farm, you have a neighboring farm, and the neighbor farm is not organic, and they're spraying pesticides. Well, guess what? That all that spray is going to come over, right? Whatever rain is coming down, if they're spraying the skies, it doesn't matter where you are, even if your country doesn't spray your skies, all air is moving all over the place, right? So it's dropping down heavy metals on top of your plant, and so a lot of places, a lot of companies won't wash their tea leaves. They'll just dry it. Maybe they just wash it once. So these guys at Wild Orchard, they wash it 4 times. That's impressive on its own. And fully organic, regenerative, organic certified. Anyways, I'm gonna have Michael on, who's the co-founder of Wild Orchard, and so we're gonna powwow and talk about all things tea as well too. But I've been really enjoying their black matcha is probably my favorite, and then I'm just trying their green matcha right now. And they also have like no plastics for tea bags, right? No microplastics for tea bags. So that's a really good, cool thing. And then one of my favorite is the English Cottage loose leaf tea. So good. All right, let's get back to our questions here. Reasons for recurrent UTI and treatment for it. Okay, so the microbiome. You have gut flora, you have bladder flora, so you have a balance of bacteria, fungus, parasites, basically a balance of microorganisms all over the body. The skin, the vagina, the bladder, the gut, the mouth, the eyes too. So we need to have a good balance. If you're getting recurrent UTIs, then there is not a good balance. So maybe there's overgrowth of yeast, overgrowth of bacteria, overgrowth of maybe even parasites. Typically, maybe not parasites for UTIs, but you never know. I do find that sometimes people will get parasites in the bladder. Crazy. And they need to clean that out. Now, the bladder is a hollow organ. Okay, why do I talk about the bladder, even though maybe you're having like maybe it's further down, you have symptoms? Is because the bladder is a hollow organ. It is dark, damp, it's hollow, it is wet, and it's warm. So it breeds it's a perfect breeding ground for bacteria, fungus, etc. So if you're having overgrowth of microorganisms there, that can, and then you're peeing things out, that could trickle downwards, right? Your body's gonna try to push things downward versus upward, because then you start hitting your kidneys, and if you go into your kidneys, you can go, the infection can go into the bloodstream. So your body's gonna prioritize to try to push everything down, okay? So if you have recurrent UTIs, you really need to look at what's happening in the microbiome. Ideally, I really like to do muscle testing to see like, hey, is there any overgrowth of yeast or bacteria? Most likely it's those two. I think the yeast one gets overlooked a lot because the yeast is probably coming out from your body. So there are things that can help treat it. There's vaginal suppositories if you're female and you're getting that. A lot of times it's usually females, so I'll just speak to the female. Right, vaginal suppositories, Megaspore Biotics or Microbiome Labs that makes Megaspore, they actually have a product that is it's for vaginal pH. So you might want to look into that. Boric acid is another one. Tons of cranberry, tart cranberry, no sugar in it. Okay, the cranberry is good, creates that acidic environment so that the bacteria can't replicate, basically kills it off. D-mannose is another good trick to use. These are all very, very simple things that I think many people know about. But if you're getting recurrent ones, then it's your entire microbiome. All right, let's move on. Sensitive to any type of scent, gives headache quickly, not even non-toxic things. For that, so you might have mineral deficiencies. If you have mineral deficiencies, you can be a little bit more sensitive to the smells and things like that. Another thing is, because now this person is even non-toxic things they are sensitive to, right? Now, if you're just sensitive to toxic things, like if I go into a car that has air freshener, right? Like I get a headache from that. So that's just toxicity, your body detecting toxicity. But if you're just sensitive to many different types of smells, I would look into nutrient deficiencies. Okay. Bad anxiety after 7 steroid pills for wheezing. What do you recommend to help? Yeah. So what you're probably referring to is side effects from overuse of these steroid drugs, right? And the first thing to consider is, okay, well, I need to know like what kind of steroid drugs you were using to determine what pathways were influenced. So maybe if you want to just hit me up on Minect and explain things in detail, I can help you out further there. But with anything with bad anxiety, okay, look in just for just to help you short term wise, you can look at things like saffron. Okay, saffron is very powerful for anxiety. You can look into the brand called The Fullest. Okay, started by one of my friends, Nikki. She's awesome, but very clean saffron. So you can look at that to help you with the anxiety part. Another thing that you want to look into is, again, minerals, because if you're doing steroids or these steroid drugs, they are very depleting on your nutrients. I actually have a presentation on that where I go over I think it's in the minerals presentation, where I go over some of the drugs and what it depletes. But you can just look that up. Look up, hey, drug induced nutrient depletion. And then you can find a chart that tells you, oh, okay, if it's this type of drug, then it depletes these types of vitamins and these types of minerals. Maybe I should supplement that back. Maybe I should get it back into my diet, right? And try that. Go with that low-hanging fruit before you start doing anything more advanced, okay? Why would you need a parasite cleanse if you're a picker? Okay, so I think I don't know if there's a perfect science on this to explain this. However, parasites create a lot of agitation. They agitate the nervous system. So because of that, you ever see people when they're a little bit like, I don't know, they seem like their nervous system is agitated. They seem like they're slightly in that fight or flight. They're like a little bit more like nervous. And what they'll do is they'll be, fidgeting with something, they're picking at something, they're like, their legs are always kind of like twitching, right? They always gotta like move, right? And fidget. So these are signs that there could be microbial imbalances in the body, potentially an overgrowth of parasites, because they could be agitating the nervous system as they're moving around, changing life cycles, as they're eating and pooping, and you're reacting to the poop and having a histamine response, and then your body's feeling inflamed. So long story short, I would consider, if you're a picker, if you're like picking your hair, my sister does that. Hopefully she doesn't see this, but she picks her hair. She's always been doing that, and maybe it's parasites. So I would consider looking into a parasite cleanse. Okay, Rogers Hood Parify. Shout out to Kim Rogers, amazing team over there. All right, best way to parasite a 7-year-old with ASD, that's autism, right? Spectrum disorder. Always picking nose and itching butt. See, there's another one that like teeth grind, itchy butt, teeth grinding, picking nose, like picking at things. Another thing to work towards. They're 7 years old. I would get them on the Rogers Hood Parify. Okay, that's a simple enough. They're in tinctures. Sometimes the instructions with the Parify stresses people out because you got to do like 15 drops here, and then you got to wait a little while and 15 drops here. This is what I tell people. Just get it. This is what I do, actually. Okay, you don't have to follow what I do. I take the 3 tinctures of the Parify all at once. I just do a dropper full, sometimes 2, sometimes 3. If I'm really feeling badly, I might do more. I take it all at once, and then take it 2 to 3 times a day, and I'm done. If I'm lazy, if I forget, and I'm not on top of it, I'll just get it all in at once. Okay. So if it's stressing you out when you have to kind of wait for to dose, then just do that. Okay. Next question. Gallstones. TUDCA. Gotta get that TUDCA in for gallstones. All right, next page here. How to lower blood pressure with natural remedies. There is a company that I just helped consult with, and I helped them come up with a formulation for their heart product, heart supplement. It's the website is called Melody Wellness, I believe so. Melody Wellness. Their product is called Heart Tune, and in there's hawthorn, reishi, nattokinase, estrogen. All these are very good at supporting the heart, specifically very good at also supporting blood pressure as well too, because it increases blood flow. When you look at things, first of all, when it comes to blood pressure, why blood pressure is caused by your heart pumping harder. And that could be for many reasons. It's either pumping harder because it's probably because there's congestion. So if you are trying to get adequate blood flow to your tissues and your blood vessels or micro blood vessels are congested, and you have plaque there, you have high elevated homocysteine, or if you have very thick blood, then it's going to be harder for your heart to pump the blood into the tissues. What it's going to do is pump harder. So you're going to increase your blood pressure. Another thing is if your tissues are very tight, like your fascia is very tight, right? You're just a tight person because you're not moving enough. That could also cause people to have higher blood pressure. That's more of a physical cause, not as common, but we know that as people get older, that could be the case because things kind of stiffen up as we get older. Okay, so the main thing is, bottom line with blood pressure, is increase blood flow. Get your nitric oxide going, increase nitric oxide. You can use beets, you can use L-arginine. I'd probably start with the beets before L-arginine. There's other nitric oxide substances, but I don't feel comfortable just talking about them right away without really knowing like who you are. So if you have a specific like blood pressure problem, just hit me up on Minect. There are some cases where it's very hard to get that blood pressure to come down naturally. So if it's worse enough, sometimes you may need medication, right? I don't like to always say that, but sometimes you do need that medication. But look into that product by Melody Wellness, Heart Tune, okay? Standard dosage, take 2 a day. Nattokinase that's in there is also been shown to help with blood pressure. Why? Because nattokinase helps dissolve some of the plaque and the debris in your blood, helping you with thinning out the blood. Okay, again, the thinner the blood is, the more that it can flow, the better that it can get to your tissues, and then the less your heart has to pump. Okay. Oh, red light therapy. How can I forget? Yeah, right there. Red light therapy for lowering blood pressure. That's a really good one because infrared and red light, that helps with releasing nitric oxide. So do the red light therapy, get sunlight. Okay, get sunlight, drink tons of water. You don't need to avoid salt, by the way. For the people who are like eating 0 salt and being salt deficient, what's up, Franco? How you doing, man? Big man from Texas over here. Franco's awesome. We blasted his nose a couple times with that's my UV device turning off. It's been 30 minutes. Traditional sauna, far infrared, or if you're doing far infrared, so full spectrum infrared sauna, kind of a scam, okay? Because a sauna, what do you want to do? You want to heat up tissue. So if you are doing near infrared, you're not really going to heat things up that well, right? Maybe if it's this close. Far infrared is the thing that will heat up tissue and produce that sweating response. So all you really need is a far infrared sauna. If you're looking at an infrared sauna, if you're looking at a traditional sauna, there's many brands out there. The heater is pretty much very similar across the board, but you're gonna want to look for the good quality wood, okay? Because if you don't have a good quality wood, then when you heat it up to like 160, 180 degrees, sometimes if it gets high enough to 200 degrees Fahrenheit, then it can expand, it can influence and expand the wood, and then you can produce cracks and things like that. So you're going to want to make sure that you have a good quality wood. Generally, a lot of guys look for like the cedar, the barrel type ones. The barrel ones are nice because you can fit more people in it if you have a good large backyard. But I don't know, man. You live in Texas, so you guys have a lot of space. But if you're looking for an infrared sauna, the brand that is good is Radiant Health. Radiant Health, um, uh, Radiant Health saunas. They have the lowest EMFs. That's another thing with infrared is there's going to be some EMFs no matter how you mitigate it, but they have the lowest amounts of EMFs when tested. They're low key. There's no fancy lights or anything. It's just the far infrared, and it's cost effective too. So Radiant Health saunas, and if you're going traditional, they're all pretty much very similar. The heaters. And I believe if you're looking for a deal, then one of my friends got, actually, I know quite a bit, I know three people that's gotten the Costco one, the traditional sauna, and they've been liking it. But with traditional sauna, you got to switch to a 220 volt. Okay. All right. Let's move along. When is a good time to use red light? Really, any time. You can use it at night. If you're using it at night, if I use it at night, I try not to blast it. So on my Elios lamps, the Italian made one that I promote, which is this UV one, but I have another one that's a huge panel. It's their Saturn. It's like the full body, and there's two settings. There's you can turn on both. You can turn on the chip on board, and then you can turn on the like the little smaller LEDs. But the chip on board is so intense. So at night, I try not to use that one because what they also say in the packet is it can affect your circadian rhythm. And that is true because let's go into nature. In nature, you're not really that getting that intense red light. If you are getting that intense red light, it's typically coming from the sun. The only time we're getting that like red light, infrared light is if you build a fire. But again, you're not putting your face to the fire, so it's that light is not that intense. It's very ambient. So if you have a device that's really powerful, just be careful. Try not to do too much of that like towards bedtime because it can kind of screw up your circadian rhythm. I don't have an issue with that. Like I sometimes will use red light at night, or I just set it as an ambient thing. It's fine. You can do it at night. You can really do it anytime. Ideally, you want to do twice a day, morning and night. You can do 5 minutes in the front, 5 minutes in the back. That's pretty good. And then if you want to do it later at night, you can you can repeat that whole protocol. So let's see. Child wakes up every morning with blocked nose, sneezing, going to going to sleep, going to sleep. Nose is clear. What's the treatment? So if you're waking, I would check for mold. If there's mold spores floating around, coming from your HVAC system or coming behind the wall or somewhere in the bathroom, these spores, because he's probably, your kid is probably running around, not really at home, right? And so he's not getting exposure to that. But then when he's sleeping for 8 hours or more, he's breathing in all that mold, and that could be causing inflammation and a histamine response. That's one thing, so check for mold. And number two is poor lymphatic system drainage, okay? His lymph is clogged up, he's not draining well, so when he's just lying still, his body's not pumping the lymph adequately, and that's why there's congestion there too. Sometimes you can solve that with Scutellaria, which is Chinese skullcap. So Scutellaria, you can buy that. Supreme Nutrition sells Scutellaria tincture. That one's really good for kids. It's good for multiple things. You'd be surprised what Scutellaria can fix on your kid when there's colds, flus, allergies, parasites, eczema, rashes, things like that. Scutellaria, for sure. Okay. Let's see. 13-year-old daughter hair thinning. Wow. Hasn't started period yet. Hormonal? Probably. I'd look into also parasites as well. How to regrow hair. You know, she's 13, so I haven't really dealt with something like that before, but for people that are a little bit older and having hair loss, something that is very popular these days is using GHK copper. Speaking of GHK copper and peptide and things like that, I just recently launched the Ultimate Biohacker membership. It's kind of underground. It's not really underground, but it's low key. It's on a down low. I'm not really like pushing it out there with anything because it's low key, right? And I really started because I started using peptides myself and biohacking and all that type of stuff. And and for me, I like to dive deep into these things. So as I found out more about it and learned more about it, it was so fascinating. The effects of peptides and whatnot. Anyways, as I got further into it, I realized that there's so much price gouging going on, and these things are very expensive for most people. But what I realize is it actually is not that expensive to make. So the problem is that it's being exchanged so many hands, and the middleman is basically like doubling and doubling and doubling the price. So anywhere from I think 7 to 15 times uh, the price of from manufacturing could be that's basically what people are paying for, which is crazy. You know, I'm all for companies like, you know, making margins and, you know, making profit for sure. You got to do that. But like, man, 15 times, like it's pretty brutal. Anyways, it's not right or wrong, it just is what it is. So I decided to do some education on peptides. That's the Ultimate Biohacker membership. That name might change, but I literally just launched it recently. I've been trying to put together a lot of content on there, and it's still under construction. Lots of things that I'm putting in there. I'm probably going to do a lot more work in that realm. I'm gonna start to shift and put my attention towards that a lot more because that one is a paid membership. It's a monthly paid membership, 20 bucks. I think it's very fair. The reason why is because you can get products there at wholesale. So essentially, I'm not really making money off of it. The compensation is just for my time for like doing research, third party testing and stuff like that. So, and putting stuff together for you guys. That's about it. So again, it's a low key thing, not really like pushing it out there, not really promoting it. But speaking of peptides, and GHK copper is a good peptide to use topically for regrowing hair. You can combine it with hyaluronic acid or like a castor oil. Castor oil is also really good for regrowing hair. If you have thin eyebrows, you can put castor oil and it does regrow eyebrows, right? So theoretically, it could help with regrowing some of the hair for your head. So you combine that with a little bit of GHK copper. I don't have the exact dosages, you know, right for now, but this is all a research project. This is all experimental. You add in some GHK copper to like a hyaluronic acid or a castor oil or something else, then you just put it over the hair. You can put like a shower cap over it or like a beanie, and you got to just keep it there like for a long period of time, a few hours, overnight ideally, etc. Okay. I just saw this question I gotta answer. What does it mean to overgrow hair on a woman? So hair growth for females, like they're not supposed to have facial hair. That's a hormonal imbalance, likely like too much testosterone or something like that, but some hormonal imbalance. You might see that like when they go through menopause. All right, grounding sheets, yay or nay? Yeah, grounding sheets are cool. I've had so many people. I used to have I didn't have grounding sheets, but I used to have like a grounding mat that I would try to sleep on, and I didn't really notice much. But you know what's interesting is, you know, like you you plug that thing into your outlet, right? And it hits and it's supposed to connect to the ground, but I don't know. I was feeling like my skin was crawling a little bit. Maybe it was just me, but maybe it's because there's dirty electricity, and that's interfering with the connection to the ground, and your body's like all kind of feeling that dirty electricity. And so anyways, I don't know. I think if you're doing grounding sheets, you should wire that thing to like outside your window and actually stake it into the dirt. That's how you're going to get a for sure ground. Okay. But I've had people tell me that grounding sheets, like patients will say, hey, I've tried all these things, blah, blah, blah. It's not helping with my sleep and recovery. And then they just buy grounding sheets from Amazon, and then they're like, this is the best thing ever. Like everything is better. So yeah, go try it. What would you test for hormones? What do I ask the doctor to submit for? So if you go to my website, I have lab test recommendations on there. Those are, if I was to test somebody's blood work, that includes their metabolic health, CBC, which is complete blood count, thyroid, and hormones. All those tests I've listed on the Rupa Health page. Those are all the things that I test for. So you can write it down, jot it down, bring it to your doctor, and then be like, hey, I have hormone issues. I think I have hormone issues. I'm concerned. Can you please test all these things? Okay. A lot of these doctors, especially your primary care general practitioners, like run so minimal stuff that I don't even understand how they get any data. Because people will come in with their minimal blood work and be like, my doctor says everything's fine, but I feel like crap. And then I go, yeah, because they didn't run anything. They ran like maybe 5% of what needs to be run. And then we run a complete blood panel, and then it discovers all these inflammatory things that are happening in the body. So anyways, you guys are changing that, because you guys are going to your doctors and going like, hey, I need to run this. Can we use chlorophyll and Inspire Cell for speech delay in an 8-year-old boy? What's the best combo? Yeah, Inspire Cell is great because it helps with it turns on the brain function and supports the neurotransmitters and supports methylation. Chlorophyll is very interesting. Now, chlorophyll, I don't know if you're referring to the brand Energy Bits, but that's where I get my chlorophyll and spirulina. They're the cleanest. I like the people behind it. I like their message. I like how they do things. It's single nutrient, single source, so very clean. Anyways, so with the chlorophyll, that one is best used for at night, and it has a detoxifying effect. It helps clean the cells, and it also supports blood. It helps build the blood. You know, I was using a lot of chlorophyll because like Catherine Armstrong, who's the CEO of Energy Bits, was like, you know, you should be doing, or, you know, she works up to like 30 tablets of the chlorophyll at night, which is the recovery bits. And I was like, okay, let me do like 30, you know? So like, I don't want to count 30, so I would just take a huge handful and just shove it in my mouth. But then like, I think for me, anything that builds my blood too much, it starts to thicken things. And yeah, but actually afterwards, like things started, I wasn't feeling too great. Not that I wasn't like it, I just feel like things were a little bit more stagnant. And then I actually ended up getting a nosebleed at night. And then after my nosebleed and letting some blood out, like felt better. So didn't have that issue. So now I just know to like not do too much chlorophyll. So I do about 5 to 10 tablets of the chlorophyll. Really good for supporting mitochondria, helping the mitochondria energy balance there. You can do the spirulina. Spirulina is also really good for mitochondria. So spirulina in the morning, which gives you a lot of nutrients. Chlorophyll to clean out the cells and also clean out the mitochondria. Doing that at night, that could be a really good thing. Okay, you can mix it in with people's like smoothies and things like that. Excuse me. Alternatives to mammogram. Get a thermography. So go on Google Maps, search up thermography. And then thermography is not just done on the breast or the chest. it's usually done on the full body. And if there's like increased heat signature, sorry, excuse me, if there's increased heat signature in the breast tissue, then they will let you know. And then afterwards you can do the mammogram, because mammogram is blasting your chest with x-rays, right, with radiation. Well, you may not need that. Why don't you do a thermography every year so that you can monitor things? And if something is funky on the thermography, which only checks scans for heat, if there's no radiation, so if something isn't right on the thermography, guess what? Then you can go and do the mammogram. That will reduce your exposure to x-rays and radiation. Okay, how do you feel about gut mapping tests like the Gut Zoomer? I think it's cool. I don't have a problem with them. I don't know if they're all that accurate or gives like all that concrete data. Like with any type of lab testing and specialty testing, I always kind of go, what is there something on there that's going to determine a different route of treatment, or is there something there that's going to tell me what to treat first, right? So if people have the funds to just go and get these $100, sometimes $1,000 tests, yeah, sure, they're great information. Do I live and die by that information? No. That's why I like to use the muscle testing in combination with lab testing. The lab testing, I like to say, lab testing shows me the map, right? It tells me where like San Francisco, LA, Dallas, New York is. And then, but if I was to go from here, Orange County, and I wanted to go to New York by driving, I don't know whether I should turn left out of my neighborhood or turn right. So that's where muscle testing gives me that real-time GPS, and I can just say, oh, okay, I'm going to turn left here. This is the most efficient route. This is where I need to go. Order of operations. Okay. All right. Next questions. How does cleanse parasites while trying to conceive? You shouldn't. You shouldn't try to cleanse and try to conceive. That, in my opinion, I think you should cleanse first before you try to conceive, okay? Because you can run into some issues there. How to naturally decrease estrogen. You can look into compounds like rosemary. So these are herbs: rosemary, chaste tree. Sometimes, here's my spiel on estrogen. This is important, guys. People will say you're estrogen dominant, okay? Which means that your estrogen is high. And then people will go, well, take all the things to lower estrogen. The DIM, the I3C with DIM, artichoke, cal-D-glucarate, okay, rosemary, things like that. Even sometimes TUDCA can be helpful for that. But anyways, everything to lower estrogen. So your estrogen is high, right? So sometimes what I find is when people do a lot of the things that help lower estrogen, they actually don't feel that good. And I often question, like, why is that the case? Is it really because the estrogen is too high? Or is it because they're estrogen dominant because their progesterone is low? See, in females, I believe the real female hormone that's more important to look at is progesterone. So a lot of times, because of increased stress, poor autonomic nervous system, long-term chronic infections, adrenal fatigue, if people want to call it adrenal fatigue, I'm just going to use that term. So basically your adrenal sucks. And it's tanking, and you have blood sugar problems, and then you have cortisol issues, and it's suppressing your production of progesterone. Well, of course, the body will feel like it's estrogen dominant, right? Estrogen here, progesterone here. Your body, what will signal to you is we have high estrogen. And then we're going to try to lower that estrogen. And you're like, wait, I don't even have hormones anymore. And then I feel like crap. So what if your estrogen is normal, but you just got to really focus on the progesterone? So that's my take on things. And I would say for a lot of people, a lot of females, they're in that category. And so I actually work on helping them balance, work on raising up their progesterone. So if you are interested in that, some things that are safe to use right off the bat, herb wise, is from Supreme Nutrition is Chase Tree and Shatavari. And another thing to consider is helping the adrenals heal and helping the ovaries heal.